Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. Author Richard Dukes has written a novel about the reunion of a man with a son he never knew he had. The name of the novel is The Forgotten Son. And we're going to talk all about this. Richard is right here with me. Richard, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Corey. It's good to be with you.
I'd love to find out more about The Forgotten Son, Richard. Can you tell me all about it?
Yeah, it's a story about a young man who had his whole life planned and just graduated from college in 1963, planned to go to law school, become public defender, get married, so forth and so on. He didn't plan on being drafted and having to go to Vietnam. He didn't plan on having an affair with a Vietnamese girl. He didn't plan on getting blown away on the front lines, but surviving. His story really begins once he returns back to the States. At age 22, sometimes decisions one makes will impact one's life later on. I know from when I was 22.
Richard, what sorts of readers did you have in mind for this?
Corey, about anyone who enjoys a love story with suspense and a surprise ending, because my story could be taking place today. There probably are forgotten children all over the world today, and I really believe this book will bless those who read it. It was a story given to me by God. I've always been a storyteller, and these stories just hit my mind. It's like a songwriter. When a song hits, you write it down or you record everything, and that's what I did. Years ago, I traveled quite a bit, and I carried a tape recorder, and when the stories came to my mind, I would record them. And The Forgotten Son was one story I put on the back burner for a long time. And last January, since I retired, it came to me again. I decided to go ahead and start writing. And the story just unfolded right on the computer.
So what does your writing background look like, Richard? Are you new to all this, or do you have experience in it all?
None. I've always enjoyed telling stories, though. That's a gift that God's given me. That's what I enjoy doing.
So how long of a process was this for you overall, the writing and the publishing and everything?
Well, I started writing in January, and I did not complete my manuscript until the end of May. And I submitted my manuscript. I didn't know who to submit it to, but one morning something popped up on my phone, and it's a publishing company. So I did some investigating about the company, and it's a very well-renowned company, been in business a long time, and I decided to send it to them. It was quite a long wait before I heard back. I'm not a patient man, but I had to be patient. And I finally heard back, and they accepted my manuscript.
And then once you handed your manuscript off to your publisher, Newman Springs, you started that whole process. Richard, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things?
Waiting, the wait. You have to be real patient on getting things processed. But once we got everything going, it really just rolled along very smoothly.
And when you were finally holding your first copy for the first time, you were looking at it. Richard, what kind of a moment was that like for you?
I just gave a big sigh of relief. I said, praise the Lord. It was a wonderful feeling to accomplish something that I started,
And when you think about the fact that you're a published author, your work is out there for the world, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
Just that readers who read the book just get a blessing from it. It's a story about forgiveness. It's a story about love. It's a story about waiting patiently. Looking
down the road, Richard, do you see yourself writing and publishing more?
Well, right now, Corey, I'm working on a screenplay for this book. We moved to an area about 2 years ago. I'm living in an apartment complex, and one of my neighbors is a published author. He has written many screenplays, and he showed me how to write a screenplay. I've been working very diligently on my screenplay, and that's the next thing in order for this book right now. I started a sequel to the book. I've written about 5 chapters on the sequel, And I did that before the screenplay idea came to me, okay?
Well, this sounds like an exciting book I think a lot of readers are definitely going to be into. Again, the title is The Forgotten Son. It's written by Richard Dukes, and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing, so you can find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also right down the street at your local bookshop. Thank you again, Richard, for coming on the show and telling me all about The Forgotten Son. It was really great talking with you.
Thank you, Corey, and you have a good evening.
The audiobook edition of the book written by Ann J. Asher, titled It's Time to Dig, Exposing and Breaking Strongholds of Sexual Abuse. That audiobook is out now, and Ann is joining me, and we get to talk all about this. Ann, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And can you tell me all about It's Time to Dig and what readers and audiobook listeners are going to find here?
Well, I am looking for people who want more information about sexual abuse, or they might be going through some trauma themselves, and any type of connection with that.
And what kind of story do you tell in here, Ann?
I tell a story about how you dig into your past and how spiritually there's two pieces of it. There's the physical world and the spiritual world. So even if you go through counseling and you get help, that might not be enough to finish it off because there's two pieces to taking care of the problem.
So this is a really personal thing for you. So what gave you the idea to write your story and publish this for the world?
I have enough information really to just help other people that have questions about it. I know that I did when I was years ago before I dug into my past, and there wasn't a lot of information out there. And so I figured that I have enough information to share with other people. It would give them more of awareness and a confirmation to what's going on in their life.
So when it comes to writing and publishing and everything like that, Ann, are you new to all this, or do you have experience in it?
No, I don't have any experience. I'm very new to this.
Being that this was your first book, Ann, was this a long journey that you were on overall?
This was a long journey. I started when I was young, learning about this, and did many years of counseling and just learned that there was a spiritual piece to this that was connected that I really didn't understand or realize. And so I think that's a big piece that I want to get my voice out and teach others.
And now that you're officially a published author, your work is out there for the world, and what's the most rewarding aspect of it all for you?
Well, I think that just to get my story out is the most rewarding piece, and to get the information out to other people.
So you had the writing of your manuscript, and then you handed that off to the publisher, and you went through that whole publishing process. And what did you find the most challenging part about that end?
Well, I think was putting the chapters together. I think that was the challenging piece of what really I wanted to write and the messages that I wanted to get out there.
And of course, we're talking about the audiobook edition. So how challenging was it for you to find that voice that was just right for you?
It wasn't too challenging. I listened to a few people, and I immediately, once I heard her, I knew that she was my voice that I wanted to get out there.
So while you were writing this, you're used to reading your words off the page or off the computer screen, and now with the audiobook, you're hearing somebody else read your own book back to you. And what's that like?
That's inspiring to me. She has a lot of strength in her voice, and as she's reading the manuscript, it just gives me more confirmation about writing the book.
So looking ahead, what are the chances that we might see more from you here in the future?
Well, we might. Just depends on how well this book does out there. And if if there's readers that want to dig into their past and know some truth out there, and there's a lot of stories and things that the abusers will do to children, and where a lot of people don't have that information.
Well, what an important book. What an important audiobook. Again, it's titled It's Time to Dig, Exposing and Breaking Strongholds of Sexual Abuse. It's written by Ann J. Asher, And this is published by the Audiobook Network. So go to where you usually get your audiobooks, and you'll be able to find this, like Audible and iTunes and Amazon. And thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me about It's Time to Dig. It was really nice talking with you tonight.
Thank you very much.
Author Samuel Cole has written a true story in his new book, Behind the Madness. And I get to find out more about this book. The author, Samuel, is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Samuel, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
No, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Samuel, can you tell me all about Behind the Madness and what readers are going to be getting into here?
It's about the Ferguson Effect riots back in the day. It's an actual true story about me in a prison system in Jacksonville, not wanting to fry like bacon to get out of prison early. It's just a crazy story. It has to do with a lot of scary subjects about the Sony Pictures hack, all the race riots back in the day. And I believe I was able to change something down there that no one's ever going to believe. But it's all there. It happened to me 10 years ago. It's all true. It's pretty scary, but it happened.
What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this, Samuel?
Just anybody who wants to get to know the truth and get it out there. I was actually down there with an information about a guy named Officer Holt who committed suicide over the fact there were 3 different types of DNA found in a dead girl in a prison cell. And no one's ever reported this over the news. It's going to be pretty scary about telling this to people that what actually happened down there 10 years ago. I was able to redirect it because he said he did it for his family. It's a pretty crazy story, and it's pretty scary, and I have to tell it, though, because when I asked for 5 years of silence after the Ebola, they stopped talking about Ebola altogether. Right after I said, don't take the flu shot, because everybody was pressuring me to take the flu shot. I'm like, I don't want to take the flu shot. Why is everybody taking the flu shot? I was talking over the phone, over the recorded phone conversations at the prison in Jacksonville. And then all of a sudden, everybody stopped talking about the flu shot. And then they started talking about different medications that they're going to be using for Ebola right after that. And as soon as I said 5 years of silence, and I didn't come out with that story in 2019, you know what happened with the COVID and George Floyd. And it's a pretty crazy, true story, and it's all true. And if anybody wants to read what actually really happened 10 years ago, it's all there, black and white.
So once you got started on this, Samuel, how long of a journey was this for you? The writing, the publishing, everything?
I finished this story a year and a half ago. I've been trying to get this story out for a year and a half. I'm not even a writer. I'm a drywaller, I'm a painter, I do murals and artwork.
So once you completed your manuscript, you get it off to your publisher, to Christian Faith, and you start that whole process. Samuel, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end?
The writing was easy. The publishing was really hard, getting it all out there and getting my words right. And they did an excellent job putting everything together because I am not a writer. And they were able to put it all together for me and did an excellent job. It's going to take a long time to get this truth out there. I really don't think anybody's going to be brave enough to report on this, which is kind of scary. But because I've had this story out there for a year and a half and nobody's actually tried to call me about this until now. So, it's a scary story, but it's all true. And I believe I changed something for the better down there. I'm just happy that I was able to get this accomplished. One thing I had to do before I passed away.
Well, so much went into this book, like you were saying, Samuel, and there's nothing like seeing your finished product. So when that day came, you're holding that first copy for the very first time. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, it was pretty great. I was able to actually read it. I keep on reading it over and over again, to tell you the truth. I'm so excited. I do. I read it over and over again because I don't really get to read too much. It's really authentic. A lot of people, when they write something, it's really full of fluff and, okay, I got to read all this about one wall, all this descriptions. It's pretty hard to, all these different books are really hard to follow sometimes. But this it gets straight to the point. It's authentic and it's straightforward and it's the cuts to the chase. I myself, I'm reading it over and over again. Definitely an interesting read, so.
Well, the story definitely needs to be told. Again, the book is titled Behind the Madness. It's written by Samuel Cole, published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can get it places like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Samuel, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me a little bit about your story. It was really great talking with you tonight.
Thank you too, Corey. You have a good night.
A I'm looking at a book right now. It's an exploration of faith, health, and God's guidance through life's challenges. It's written by Jane Amelia Smith, and it's titled Health Along the Way in God's Sovereignty. And we'll be talking all about this. Jane is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jane, welcome. Thank you for joining me here tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Jane, can you tell me what you've written about in Health Along the Way?
Well, it entails many of my own personal experiences, my work experience. I've been in public health education for approximately 35 years, and then I've also done a lot of work clinically. So pulling back on those experiences, I've tried to express my views and things that I see that are problematic within the healthcare delivery system. There are many things, many aspects of the book, but I think everything falls under the same umbrella, and that is God's sovereignty and how He works in each and every one of our lives, even when we're ill and facing death. He is there for us. I think some of the topics that I expound upon are things that people are fearful about facing or looking into or understanding that this is going to be a part of each and every one of our lives. We are all going to need help in handling some of the things we will experience in this life, and there's no other place that help comes from but our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Jane, what sort of a reading audience did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Anyone who can read, anyone who has questions about life and illness and what it's all about, why there is illness, why do we suffer, who is going to be there to help us pull through, what is the end of our suffering, where do we go from there?
So, Jane, how did the idea for this come about? What was that spark that made you sit down and get started on that?
Well, I really feel like I was supposed to write the book. It was compiling my own personal experiences, but it was also more than that. I just felt like I wanted to help people see that there was an answer to why they might be suffering, why they're dealing with a chronic disease or a fatal disease, or why somebody dies because of an accident or an injury. I've had to face illness and death in my own family and sudden death through accidents. I've had to face those things, and really I think the only thing that has gotten me through was my Christian faith.
So once you did get started on this, clear up through the publishing and everything, Jane, was this a long journey that you were on?
Yes, I would say so. I think I've had a lot to learn in my life, and it's been a process. I didn't always go to my faith for help, and in those times, the things I've had to deal with were, so much harder. I really wanted to share that with the reader and help them to get through whatever they were dealing with.
So you have the writing of the manuscript, and then you're ready to send it off for publishing, and then you start that publishing process. Jane, what was the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Well, I am a bit of a perfectionist, especially when it comes to something like my writing or my painting. I'm also an artist. There was a tremendous amount of work this time around. I also have written 3 other books. There just was a lot of work, especially with this book, to get it to, where it was ready to be published.
Then after all that work that you put into it, there's nothing like that finished product, a real thing. Health Along the Way was a real book. You were holding your first copy, Jane. What was that moment like for you?
I'm sure it's kind of like giving birth. I mean, you labor very hard to write a worthwhile book. Once it's in print, it's kind of a feeling of elation, finally, just maybe somebody will pick it up and want to read it.
Again, it's titled Health Along the Way in God's Sovereignty. This is written by Jane Amelia Smith and published by Christian Faith Publishing, and it's available places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, and also right down the street at your local bookshop. Jane, thank you again for talking with me tonight. It was really great.
Well, thank you for your time, and I hope you read the book.
There's a collection of poetry and prose in the new book by Robert F. Gerace. It's titled Bringing on the Dawn, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Robert is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Robert, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me tonight.
You're welcome.
Robert, can you tell me all about what readers are going to find in Bringing on the Dawn?
There's many different things in the book. When I said poetry and prose, that's exactly what I meant. There's a lot of poetry, but there's also a short story in there. There's some music lyrics. There's many different kinds of poetry. Short stories about a little girl that's learning about her own magic and how to take care of herself. There's a real cute poem about fairies and a whimsical journey that they take in life. Many different things I think the reader would find very interesting. And I try to make all the work as accessible as possible.
Robert, what kinds of readers do you think would really be into this?
I think anything from high school above. People that enjoy poetry and enjoy short story, I think would really like the book. There's a lot of different kinds of poetry in here. Some of it's very personal. Some of it's historical. Some of it is very emotional. I think I've covered a lot of different areas with the book itself.
So, Robert, how did this all come about? How did you decide to collect your work and publish it?
Oh, boy, that's a little bit of a tough question. I was going through some of my old work, and when I say some of my old work, it goes all the way back 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And I started putting that together and looking at it, and then I started doing some more writing on my own. So it's a combination of new writing and re-editing some of the older things that I've done over the course of the years. Now that I'm retired, I have the time, and I figured I could best use that time by writing a book.
So are you experienced in the whole book thing, or are you new to it all?
I'd say I'm a little bit new to it. I've published one other book before, but I did that in self-publishing. So that was quite a bit different than what I'm doing right now.
So once you got started on this, was this a long journey for you, putting all your work together, then handing that off to the publisher and doing all that?
No, I wouldn't say it was a long journey. I would say it was pretty interesting because I learned a lot along the way. And that's something that's important to me, to keep on learning as you get older. I say it took me about 6 or 7 months to put it together. And then it took me about 7 or 8 edits, and I had somebody else help me go over the edits with me to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I'd say probably everything included would take about 8 months.
So yeah, that publishing process, there's a lot involved in that. Robert, what did you find the most challenging part about that end of things?
Most challenging? The editing for me was the hardest because it's very difficult to edit poetry. And to get somebody to help you, that's really, really hard. You're going to miss things if you do it all by yourself.
Right.
And I've done it like 7 or 8 times, and then I had somebody else help me. And luckily, she knew exactly what was going on. She was familiar with poetry. So that helped out an awful lot.
You're a published author. Your work is out there for the world, Robert. What's the most rewarding thing to you about that?
I think, having people enjoy it. Placing all my ideas and thoughts into poetry and prose. I write what I see, what I hear, what I feel. I write in notebooks, scraps of paper, whatever I have at that time. I'm pretty happy with the way everything turned out, but it makes me even happier when people sit down and enjoy what the writing is.
I could only imagine that moment whenever your first copy came in and you were holding it in your hands for that first time, Robert. What was that like?
That was pretty exciting, I've got to admit. I had to do a little video for the publishing company about opening the book for the first time. That in itself was pretty interesting and pretty enjoyable. I was pretty excited, to be able to open the box and then find your book there with your name on it.
So looking down the road, have you given thought to maybe publishing some more?
Yes, I have. I've been doing some writing quite profusely lately. So I've got about 50 or 60 more pieces that I'm looking at right now and that I'm editing and going over.
It's something that happens to so many of us authors, and that's writer's block. It can be the worst. Robert, do you ever have to deal with something like that?
Oh, yes. No question about it. Believe it or not, I take a lot of notes. If something pops into my head, and I'll jot down what the idea is, maybe I'll write a couple, 3 or 4 lines about it, and then I'll leave it, and I'll get back to it in a few days. Usually that helps me out a lot.
The name of this book, again, is Bringing on the Dawn. It's written by Robert F. Gerace and published by Newman Springs Publishing, so you can find it really anywhere like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Robert, it's been fantastic talking with you tonight and learning about your work. Thanks again for talking with me.
Oh, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it.
Courageous Compassion with Care. It's the name of the book that just came out, written by Annie Crenshaw, and this tells of a journey of redemption, resilience, and self-discovery. Annie is joining me right now, and we're going to talk all about this. Annie, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I really appreciate you being here with me.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Annie, can you tell me all about what you've written in Courageous Compassion with Care?
It's about a former lawyer who becomes an FBI agent, and he reconnects with his family and old acquaintances, in which he plays a role in bringing them all together in spite of their differences.
Annie, what sorts of readers did you have in mind for this?
If it's safe to say, I would think that my target readers range from age 18 on up into the golden ages, which is women and men.
And how did this come about, Annie? How did you get the idea to start off on this?
I was sitting down one day and just making some notes. And as I was making the notes, it began to start developing into a story, and I couldn't stop because it just kept coming to me.
And are you the kind of writer that uses an outline? Did you know kind of how things were going to be from beginning to end, or did you just start writing and see where the story went from there?
I just started writing and just saw which way it would go and develop, and then I did some rewrites, but I just developed it as I went along.
So what does your writing background look like, Annie? Have you ever done anything like this before?
I've mainly done poetry. I've written songs, but not a book.
So being your first book, was this a really long journey for you from beginning to end?
It was like 6 months long for me. I had some personal things that was going on in my life at the time, but it took 6 months to write.
So you hand your manuscript off to the publisher, you get that publishing process started. Annie, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things?
The most challenging things, I really don't think I had any challenges going into publishing the book because I handed my manuscript off and the publishing company mainly did everything for me, except I had to go back and, do the proofreading of it to make sure things were correct and put in place. But I really didn't have any challenges.
There was nothing like seeing that finished product, so when you got your first copy, you were holding it in your hands for the first time and looking at it, Annie. What kind of a moment was that like for you?
I felt like, wow, I am really a publisher and that my book is really going to be on Amazon and other outlets. It felt good.
And now that you are officially a published author, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Finally finishing what I started and allowing my family to be the critics is the most rewarding for me, and being able to see my published work actually on Amazon.
So while you were writing this, it happens to a lot of us authors, and that's writer's block. Did you ever have challenges like that?
Yes, I did. It was days that my thoughts was not coming together and the storyline wasn't the way that I would want it. So I had to take a step back for a minute and then come back maybe in about a week or so and try it again.
And this is a great cover. It's beautiful. Was that a tough thing to determine what you wanted this thing to look like?
Yes, it was, because I had chose several options, but then I finally found the one, and that was the cover of the book.
So looking down the road, do you see yourself writing more and getting more published out there?
Yes, I do. I already have a book in the works, and it's called Compassion with Care, the Remix.
A lot of listeners right now, Annie, are authors who are just starting out. So do you have anything in the way of advice that you could offer?
Yes, I do. I would say always, no matter what you're doing, if you're watching TV or if you're listening to music, keep a journal and a pen ready to write down your thoughts. And by all means, please complete what you start. No matter how long it takes, you never know where it'll take you.
Well, I think a lot of readers are going to be really into this book. Again, the title is Courageous Compassion with Care. It's written by Annie Crenshaw and published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing. So find it at places like Amazon, and Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Annie, it's been really great talking with you tonight and learning all about your work. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
The new book written by Jordan Atkins is a profound and inspiring spiritual journey. The title is 40 for 40, and we're going to be talking all about this. Jordan is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jordan, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Jordan, can you tell me all about what you've written in 40 for 40?
Yeah, it's a book. It wasn't necessarily meant to be a book. It was my journey with my 40-day fast. I felt when I originally took on that journey to, write about it every day. I did kind of feel like maybe, I was going to have a book, but it was never going to be meant for the public, something maybe for my children, my wife to read, And yeah, after, the 40 days, then I felt like, this is supposed to be a book. And, I guess the rest is history from there.
So what kinds of readers do you think would be really into it?
I feel like it's for people that are searching, that are kind of desperate in where they're at in life. And, I guess that's where I was. And people that are, looking for that next place to say, you know what, I know I need to change something in my life. Fasting for me, obviously, I've done more than just, the regular fasting that I did. But for me, it's like, 40 days, what? A lot of good men did it, right? In the Bible. So you're like, what? Let me join good company. It changed their lives. They could change mine.
So, Jordan, what does your writing and publishing background look like? Are you new to all this, or are you experienced in it?
I'm so new to this. I'm still kind of like shocked, right? Because I'm like, this wasn't the intention, right? It was not. It was just like, what? If my kids read it and get closer to God, what? That's a win for me. So, as far as being an author, it's still kind of weird hearing that. But it's just like, what? To God be the glory. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to use it.
From beginning to end, Jordan, was this a long process for you?
Yeah, I would say probably from the beginning. Obviously, it was a 40-day fast, but I would say it's about 2 years. About 2 years.
So you have your manuscript and you hand that off to the publisher, to Christian Faith. You get that whole process started. Jordan, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Honestly, they were amazing. They walked through me, with me through the whole process. They made it very easy. Obviously, I haven't gone through the process before. I didn't even know anything like really about how the whole book process works. But they were amazing the whole way. Honestly, it was pretty easy.
Then you put a lot of time, a lot of work into this, and that day came, you're finally holding the first copy, 40 for 40, you're looking at it, and your name's on the cover and everything, Jordan. What was that moment like for you?
Honestly, I probably shouldn't say this, but I cried. Honestly, I cried because, I have dyslexia. I won't pick up all the time, but, I was always told that, you're not smart. I've heard it from teachers. I've heard, I've had this broken part of me, like, oh, I'm not smart enough. You can't write, you can't do things like that. And when I finally got it and I'm looking at it and I'm reading my name and I'm like, I get all the way to the end of the book and I read author Jordan Atkins. And I'm like, God is so good. You know what I mean? And my relationship with Jesus Christ is like, I just know I can do anything, that he wants me to do. And he wanted me to write this book, and I did. Yeah, I cried. To answer it, I cried.
So what do you think the chances are that we might see some more from you here down the road?
I would say the chances are good, honestly. Yeah, I think the Lord has given me some things to say and to write down, and now I have the confidence to do so.
A lot of our listening audience right now are authors just starting out. So, Jordan, is there anything maybe that you picked up along the way of doing this that you could throw out there for them as some advice?
Yeah, that a fear that, nobody wants to hear what you have to say, that you're not important enough, that you can't do it. I would say, yeah, just throw it out the window. I always go from the faith base because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. But, yeah, I would say just do it. Don't worry about the rejection. Don't worry about it because there's no way I thought this would ever happen. So, yeah, just do it.
Great advice. Well, what an inspiration I think this book is going to be for so many people. Again, the title is 40 for 40. It's written by Jordan Atkins, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available really everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Jordan, got to thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about 40 for 40. It was really great talking with you tonight.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great talking with you as well.
sitting right next to me now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I'm excited to be talking with author Tom Oldoski. Tom, welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, Tom. I wanted to say congratulations. Your new book is titled My Long Strange Journey with Jesus, the Bible, the Christian Church, and Spirituality. Can you tell me all about this book, Tom? What are readers going to find here?
Well, it's mostly about my spiritual journey and what I encountered along the way. My goal is I was hoping it might prompt readers to examine their own feelings about God and the universe, and hopefully spark some maybe loving conversations with people. I never thought that spirituality should be used as a weapon. So anyone looking for fodder to fuel their hate, please don't read this.
And Tom, what kinds of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
People who are just curious, people who maybe have had a spiritual journey of their own and wanted to hear about someone else's. People who, well, here's the inspiration. A couple of guys, my good buddies Ron Batonio and Jack Strayer, got sitting around, and we're guys in our 70s. And when in your 70s, mortality kind of looms large. And so we started talking about our lives and our spirituality and our path and what's going to happen, as Shakespeare says, once we shuffle off this mortal coil. And so I just kind of loved to write. And so I just started writing these ideas down and things we'd been bouncing around and talking about. And they kind of encouraged me to, you gotta try to publish it. Because I'd written it down kind of in book form, because I had tried to publish a book once a few years ago, and I got some very nice rejection letters. So I put it in book form, and then I kind of shared it with them, and they encouraged me to, why don't you try to get it published? He said, I think a lot of people are thinking about this kind of stuff. I put out a couple of feelers, and it really kind of didn't go much of any place, so it kind of sat on the shelf. I wrote this in 2021. I decided, it felt good. It felt like a catharsis to write it. So I didn't really pursue it until I read Bill Tortorella's book, The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. It was about his near-death experience, and I have a part in my book about near-death experiences. And I kind of noticed that he colored outside the lines of Christianity a bit, or traditional Christianity, and that's kind of what I did. So I was curious who his publisher was, and I was surprised when I found it was Christian Faith Publishing, since it traveled a little outside the box, and so did mine. So since mine did, I thought, maybe I'll give it a try.
So yeah, you handed off your manuscript to Christian Faith. You started that publishing process. Tom, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
Well, I think being a first-time author, I was pretty naive. And so it went through 3 edits, and I have to hand it to the editors at Christian Faith Publishing for their undying patience with a first-time author and not really knowing what I was doing. And I was surprised at how intricate the process was, and now I have a great appreciation and respect for people who go through the publishing process.
And then you finally got your first copy in. It was a real thing. You're holding it for the first time, Tom. What was that moment like for you?
Surreal. I got it out of the box, and my son says, Dad, you published a book. And I think that's what made it the best for me, is my kids were so proud of me, my wife was proud of me, my friends were proud of me, and I just wanted to see if I could do it. And there it was.
So do you think you might do it again? You think about more writing and publishing down the road?
Well, at 74, I think this might be my last rodeo, but, never say never.
Exactly. Now that you've got this book out there, I'm sure you learned a lot along the way. So is there anything maybe in the way of advice that you could throw out there for the aspiring authors that are listening to us?
It's the love of writing. Even if it hadn't gotten published, I just enjoy writing. And I think if you're a writer, if you just have a passion for writing, just do it. And then if it goes anywhere or if things pop up, take those as maybe not coincidences, that those are opportunities, and roll with it, go with it. And it helps to have really good, inspiring friends and family like I did.
Well, it sounds like this is going to be thought-provoking and inspiring for a lot of readers. Again, this book is titled My Long Strange Journey with Jesus, the Bible, the Christian Church, and Spirituality. It's written by Tom Oldoski, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and really available anywhere like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Tom, thank you again for coming on the show and talking with me about your book. It was really great.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
The new book by author Christy Tayman is a testimony of redemption and faith. It's titled On the Other Side. And Christy is joining me here right now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about this book. Christy, welcome. Thanks for being here with me tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be with you today.
Well, it's great to be talking with you, Christy. Can you tell me all about On the Other Side? What readers are going to find in here?
Well, it's a true story. It's my story of how I got pregnant when I was 16 and had an abortion, and got pregnant at 18 and had another abortion. And years later, I recognized I was lied to. I was told there wasn't babies there. And when I found out that there were, I went through a lot of problems of, the guilt and the shame and all of that happens. And I was a Christian by that time and struggled. So I know there's a lot of other women out there that have had abortions that probably were lied to like I was. And that's what prompted me to do this book.
Would you say your primary audience then for this would be women who have gone through that same kind of thing that you did?
There's 66 million of them in the United States.
Wow.
And not just women. For every baby that's been aborted, there's a father that lost a child. So I do address that in the book, too, to men who paid for someone to go have the abortion and then later realized that was my child, too.
So, Christy, this is very personal to you, and I don't imagine it could have been an easy thing for you to write. So what made you decide to write your story and tell it to the world?
That's easy. The Lord told me to write the book. And I said if he would give me the words and he would guide me on what to say and how to put it together, that it could be a tool for him to use, to help other women to find the Lord and to find healing and to find Jesus' love and forgiveness. That's what it was all about.
So have you ever done anything like this before, Christy, as far as writing and publishing, or are you new to all this?
This is my second book. I had another book published. The other one was fiction story, an adventure story. This one was my story, so it's true.
So once you got started writing your story, how long of a process was this for you? The writing of it and then the publishing process and all of that?
Well, the writing of it was about 6 months. I would start every day, asking the Lord to give me the words. And when I'd finish writing, then I'd ask the Lord, is there anything in here that I should take out? And if there's something I didn't put in, and he was faithful to, lay stuff on my heart. Yeah, you should have said this, or no, I don't think you should say that. So that took a while to work through. And then the publishing process is just step by step. They guide you. Here's what you do first. Here's what you do next. And I think I just had to give it all to the Lord and say, if this is your will, it's going to be done. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, there is a lot involved in the publishing end of things. So, Christy, what did you find the most challenging part of that?
The most challenging of the publishing is that I'm not in control. I wanted it to go fast and be done and be out there, and it takes time. And the Lord kept saying, I have a plan, and it will work out. So I just have to step back and let him do what he's going to do.
So looking down the road, Christy, do you see yourself writing and publishing more?
I think so. I think the Lord's already laid another book on my heart. I think it's going to be called How Deep Are Your Scars? There's so many people out there hurting, and not just from abortion, from being abused, from being abandoned, from being left alone, from divorce, from, everything that's going on out there in the world. And we have deep scars, and I know the only way to heal is to take Jesus' hand and say, I need you, I need you, I need this. And so I think that's the next project.
Well, what a wonderful book, what a wonderful message. This is definitely needed. Again, the book is titled On the Other Side. It's written by Christy Tayman, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available really everywhere, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Christy, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight and learning all about the book. Thanks so much.
Thank you kindly.
Author Scotty Bare has just released an adventurous yet sincere collection of poetry. It's titled Bear in Mind, a collection of poetry. And Scotty is right here with me now, and we get to talk all about this book. Scotty, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Scotty, can you tell me all about Bear in Mind and what readers are going to find here?
Bear in Mind is a collection of several different poems that I wrote, really two different topics, spiritual things and then life situations that people face within their childhood, their adulthood, and then parenthood. So there's several different things within the book that readers can relate to.
And what sorts of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Any reader, really. Those who focus, on the spiritual aspects of their life, and then also those who may have faced tough situations throughout their life, and then the enjoyment that life brings. There's a lot of different things within the book that everybody can relate to.
So how did this come about, Scotty? What sparked the idea to get this book out there?
Well, I've always had, different ideas and topics on my mind and I had the ability to, put those together within poetry. So I think what inspired me is just to get the information out there to help other individuals that may be facing similar situations that I went through. And then, also to create some laughter. There's some humorous poems within the book that I believe a lot of people have similar experiences in their own life that they've dealt with.
So is this your first published work, Scotty, or do you have experience doing this?
Yes, this is my first time being published. I've enjoyed the process. I didn't realize all that it entailed, but I've learned a lot over the past year, definitely.
Now, that publishing process, there's a lot involved there. Scotty, what did you find the most challenging part of that end of things for you?
I think just the anticipation of, everything being ready and, the process of having everything reviewed and then sending it back. And, I expected that, but I think the greatest challenge is just the excitement that you have, waiting for your book to finally be completed.
After all that anticipation, that day came for you, your first copy came in, and you're finally holding it in your hands, Scotty. What was that moment like?
It was special, to be honest with you. I would have never imagined writing a book, nevertheless having one published. I've always been kind of shy and quiet person, and so it was a humbling experience, an enjoyable moment for me, and it'll always be a special moment when I got the copies of my book.
So from beginning to end, was this a long journey that you were on, the writing, the publishing, everything?
It took about 2 years, I guess, to put all the poems that I had written together, and then with the additional poems that I had wrote over that same time. So as far as the writing goes, there was, like I said, the 2-year process, and then, about a year process to finish with the publishing and everything. So it took a little bit, but, not as long as some writers, having spent years putting books together.
Have you given thought to maybe doing it again? What are the chances that we're going to maybe see some more from you here down the road?
I had actually started a book prior to this one. I have everything laid out, and the name of it is called Cookie Cutter. It's going to be focused on a lot of the stereotypes that we see in the world and how people categorize different groups of people, using the analogy of a cookie cutter, not realizing that we're all human beings, we're all the same and face the same issues and troubles that life brings. Even though we are own individuals, I think society has got to the point to where they, purposely group people together. So I actually had started that one first. But with the poetry, that one with the writing came easier to actually complete. I want to put a little bit more thought process into the other book before I look at publishing it.
Well, I love that you're using this book to help others and create some laughter as well, because we definitely need more of that out there. Again, this book is titled Bear in Mind, a collection of poetry. It's written by Scotty Bare, published by Covenant Books, and available really everywhere, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Scotty, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Yes, sir. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you having me.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.